that the previous author used, we also entered. And we're basically a peer mentoring group that the System Dynamics Society started. So one of the things the System Dynamics Society does, it tries to help youngsters and students to get going on system dynamics. And what they do is if somebody is interested, they'll try and find them people who can work together in the peer group. So our peer group is basically, they've asked me to be their sort of mentor. So we've got a lazy who's from Brazil but studies in Portugal. And we've got people from India, Egypt, France, so also quite well spread out. So basically, this is what I'm going to be talking about. I'll talk context, method, discussion. Then we'll move to the research question. So let me just push on. So basically, the context was the question. One of the questions there was, what is the implications of biases in AI? How do you model that? So the first thing is that we looked at the social implications of the internet. So it becomes the daily me. Everybody's got their streams that they feed from. There's political polarization and extremism. You've seen Donald Trump's and Al-Qaeda's and everybody else's. And then it comes down to biases. And a bias is basically, if I believe this, I'll ignore everything else. And my ultimate goal at the moment is to build a AI that's 100% biased. Totally biased. And that's just me. So the research question that we had to address was, how will advances in generative AI impact things like social unrest, trusting institutions, political polarizations, and then how can we try and mitigate the impact of this technology? So the way we did it is we did it in system dynamics. First step, you'll see a lazy redid the thing in Vensim. I built us the model in I think. I think there's two other users in the world of I think. Everybody else calls it Stella. We get a special icon just for us. And basically, we looked at three things. We looked at the generative AI development. We've looked at the adoption process. And then we look at the risk of social discord. This part of the model is basically saying that there's, let me see if I can get this back. Yeah. So basically what we're saying in the top stream is that, well, there's two types of AIs that can be developed, machine learning tools. The way you train it influences it. So you can try and do what ChatGPT or the developers of GPT did. What they did is they paid hundreds of millions of dollars to get people to scrub the data before they gave it to ChatGPT to learn. Now, the ethicalness about this is an issue because the people who scrap the data have to look at all the bad data and decide it's bad and then take it out. And then the second one starts looking at a non-biased AI. And the key there is to build a non-biased AI is going to take you a lot longer because you have to scrub the data before you can start training. That's why ChatGPT is, I think, up to 2020. And when you just launch an AI system like our good friends at Google and X and everybody has launched an AI engine, but how much time did they spend on training? If Donald Trump launches an AI, can you guess what the training profile would look like? Okay. And what we're saying is basically people will accept these tools if it's quick and dirty, if it's there, and they'll start using them. But then what we did is we do say that there is, sorry for the online audience, I can't show you this, but basically what we're saying is that as the tools become available, people will say, well, maybe we need to improve and bring the quality up and move them into higher quality kind of models. Like ChatGPT was there based on GPT-3. We've now got GPT-4 as well, if you're willing to pay money. I know some people do. I'm poor. So I built system dynamics models, a lot cheaper. And then we looked at the adoption. So basically saying, and again, this was done in the absence of useful data, of a lot of data. And we basically said, there's a fixed number of people in the potential group of adopters, and people can adopt or decide not to use it. You can also go to the first and easiest thing, realize it's a problem, and then move to a non-biased biased AI. And then our final sector of the model is the one that focuses on how people use this AI to sow social discord. Because theoretically, if Donald Trump is clever enough and he doesn't call it Donald Trump, he could sell you all Donald Trump's thoughts as part of that AI. Some of our results were, okay. So basically what you can see here at the bottom is that our non-biased AIs, what we did is our first AI that we launched was, well, if you want to develop, start at the same point. Your non-biased AIs is going to take a lot longer before they see the light of day. And what that means is that there's going to be a much faster adoption of the easy ones that because they're freely available. How many of you use different AI engines? Half the audience uses different AI engines. Then our adoption, of course, this basically follows the Bass curve. So anybody who's bought our book, and if you haven't bought one yet, please do. You'll see that we've basically used the Bass curve to show what happens. But what we also see is that the risk of social discord and the public trust, if we use these unbiased AIs, we can see that that risk increases dramatically. Over time, it will drop because people do tend to migrate to things that's of better quality. So the next step was basically to look at a bit of sensitivity analysis around the risk of polarization. And basically, we've run this and we give you a confidence interval. That's another thing about what system dynamics does. It gives you a confidence interval over time. So a very useful tool. So finally, if there's widespread adoption of the various generative AI tools, if we do not be vigilant, it will increase the risk of social polarization. The interesting thing was that when we started looking at this, the whole world was, there was ChatGPT and very little else. And suddenly out of the blue, I think in 6 months' time, there's about 7 AI engines available now. So what we do say as well is that even the best AI tools are somewhat biased. Because how much data do you have to scrub? At what level do you? Where do you draw the line? Do you only train it on PG data, or do you train it on maybe up to 16 or to 18? Or, what do you cut out? And as I said earlier, one of my objectives still is to write an AI that's 100% biased. And if you can guess why, you can buy me Smarties. Okay, then in terms of limitations, this is a very simplistic, this is a conceptual model. We can still go back and start calibrating it, but then we need some real data. And the reality is what you want to see is, you want to see the anticipated funny behavior, as you saw here, where there's an adoption and a switch. And when you start playing around with the parameters in the model, you start seeing that. Then our future research, we can put more elaborate bits and pieces around how biased AIs relate to social unrest. We would then need to calibrate the model against real adoption. So for example, the first model we did, we actually tracked what ChatGPT was doing in terms of adoption. We didn't put, we just guesstimated numbers and say there's 100 million people that potentially will use the AI system. And then said, okay, now go out and see how this thing works. And then the final one is the policy analysis. And interesting, one of the policy directions that we played with is to say, if you say basically, if you want to enter the market the moment you've finished the AI, if the data hasn't been scrubbed, you need to give it 18 months to a 2-year waiting period before you launch it. Because by then, that information will be sufficiently outdated to start reducing that risk of social polarization. I know I didn't do justice to this. Alazi is a much better presenter. But thank you. I don't know if there's any questions. We've got some references if you're interested. I'm not going to read all of them.